up, Taiwan? I'm Sally Jensen with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. Taiwan's president-elect has named former DPP chair Zhuo Rongtai as his pick for the country's next premier. Ching-te made the announcement a few hours ago in Taipei. Leslie Liao was there.
Taiwan President-elect Ching-te has announced that Zhuo Rongtai will be his pick for premier ahead of his inauguration next month. Now, Zhuo Rongtai is a seasoned politician. He's a former Taipei city councilor, a former legislator, and he was once the chair of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. Taiwan's premier is the top advisor to the president. They're also the head of the central government, and they're tasked with presenting administrative policies to the legislature.
我也会要求所有的内阁团队成员对自己的业务、自己的政策要充满了信心，对于国人的需求，对于国会的监督，要诚恳、积极的沟通。
Shortly after Zhuo's appointment, Zhuo announced his deputy, his secretary general, and his spokesperson. Taiwan's next vice premier will be former culture minister under President Tsai Ing-wen, Zheng Lijun. The secretary general will be current head of Taiwan's National Development Council, Gong Mingxin, and the cabinet spokesperson will be Ching-te's presidential campaign spokesperson, Chen Sikai. Zhuo's next step will now to be appoint cabinet ministers. He must first recommend names to President-elect Ching-te, whom Lai must confirm. Zhuo has remained non-committal about his picks so far, but one name floating around for foreign minister is current secretary to President Tsai Ing-wen, Ling Jialong. And then there's Wellington Koo, who is the Secretary General of the National Security Council right now. His name is in the running for defense minister. Of course, none of this has been confirmed so far. Zhuo's appointment as Taiwan's premier may bode well for bridging the gap between the ruling Democratic Progressive Party and the opposition Kuomintang, because as news surfaced of Zhuo's appointment, well, the KMT's chair, Eric Zhu, actually praised Zhuo, saying he was a good communicator and a good coordinator. Justin Wu and Leslie Liao in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
For more on Lai's decision to appoint Zhuo Rongtai as premier, Jaime Ocon spoke to Ray Wang, a foreign policy analyst based in Washington, D.C.
So, Ray, I want to get your immediate reaction on this appointment of Taiwan's new premier. What are the obstacles he's going to have to face, and was this expected?
That's very important because the premier usually handle most of the domestic issues for Taiwan. I think this appointment is also related to, Zhuo Rongtai. He's a former DPP chairman, and who also have a lot of political experience. But I think the very big challenge for any premier that being appointed, and get into the office after the May 20, is that the domestic issues, and that is the biggest issues. Actually, the biggest issues in the election campaign, right? A lot of foreign media outlets care about like foreign policy, security policy, but domestic voters really care about domestic issues: housing price, salaries, rising living expense, stuff like that.
Do you think that there was any sort of international signaling, or is this sort of a sign that we're going to get a continuation of the current administration?
Well, I think the key message the Lai administration is thinking to send to both Beijing and Washington, also broader international community, is they want to send the policy orientation will be follow the Tsai administration, which I think is a kind of broader consensus, whether it's in Washington or in Taipei. That's kind of the things that people expected. You have foreign minister who are now is going to lead the National Security Council, and you also have the guy that previously lead the National Security Council, the Wellington Koo, gonna go for leading the Ministry of National Defense. So they are the close advisors for the Tsai administration, and by picking those people, it shows the message that okay, so the administration gonna follow the policy, especially when it comes to its relationship with China and the United States.
And one of the biggest issues that faces Taiwan is this question of the cross-strait policy. How do you think Beijing is going to take this appointment and future appointments if this current trend of continuing the Tsai administration continues?
I think from Beijing's perspective, they are always very distrust on Lai compared I mean, even distrust more, unlike compared to the Tsai administration. So I think the appointment, well, I think in one way, it's definitely kind of show that, okay, there's a policy continuation. Lai also don't want to make any surprise of its cross-strait policy or its policy toward the United States. But like I said, Beijing want to see more. Like, how you gonna push the cross-strait relations in the next 4 years? They want to see more. Now it's just an appointment, and eventually those appointment they are still the advisors, top advisors for Lai administration. But eventually the policy will be led by Lai Ching-te himself.
That was foreign policy analyst Ray Wang speaking to Jaime Ocon. A much anticipated meeting between former President Ma Ying-jeou and China's Xi Jinping is set to happen in the next few hours. Tiffany Wong is following the story for us in Taipei. Tiffany, what do we know about this meeting?
Over this meeting, and if it happens, this would be the second time that Ma and Xi have met. The first time was almost 10 years ago when they were both presidents, and that was the first time that sitting presidents across the Taiwan Strait had met. Now, this time, Ma is doing it, as he claims, in a personal capacity. He's leading a group of Taiwanese youth on cultural exchange in China. But throughout this trip, he's been giving speeches about peace, and he's been hoping to share those sentiments in some kind of meeting with Xi. Now, Xi has been calling all the shots on this expected meeting and has apparently delayed it to coincide with the U.S., Japan, and Philippines summit that's happening in Washington, D.C. Now, all of those countries have security concerns in the South China Sea, which Beijing claims.
And what's so important about this meeting, and how could it impact cross-strait relations?
Now, you have to remember that it's been 8 years since Ma was out of office. And although he's a former president of Taiwan, he's kind of lost touch with his party, the Kuomintang, which is the major opposition party in Taiwan. Now, Ma has even been considered a bit too friendly with Beijing, and that's something that this trip to China certainly underscores. Now, people I've spoken with say that they doubt that a meeting between Ma and Xi will actually affect any major changes to cross-strait policy, but Ma is still a well-known figure in Taiwan, and at least in his personal capacity, it appears that he is trying to cool tensions in the Taiwan Strait, and this comes ahead of Lai Ching-te, the Taiwan's president-elect, taking office next month, and Lai is somebody that Beijing sees as less than friendly. Now, some people say that Xi has been really trying to take control of the narrative by shifting the date of this meeting to coincide with that trilateral summit and send the message of bolstering his claims in the South China Sea. But they say that Ma appears to have lost any directive in this meeting.
Thanks, Tiffany. That was Tiffany Wong, live for us in Taipei. The earthquake in Hualien has reshaped Taiwan's topography. Taiwan's National Mapping Center has compared elevations across the country before and after the earthquake. It found land around the epicenter is now an average of 8.1 centimeters higher than it had been. In one area, land even rose 45 centimeters. Government figures show inflation is slowing in Taiwan. The Consumer Price Index for March, which measures changes in goods prices, was up 2.14% compared to the same month last year. That's lower than February's jump of just over 3%, a sign that inflation may be slowing down. Notably, the price of eggs fell by over 18%, its biggest drop in 4 years. However, officials say rising international oil prices and Taiwan's recent electricity price hike will likely push overall consumer prices up this year. It's been 45 years since a landmark piece of US legislation set the foundations for Washington's ties with Taipei. Jeremy Olivier looks at how the Taiwan Relations Act has come to define the close but unofficial relationship between the US and Taiwan in the decades since.
The end of an era and of a nearly 4-decade post-war order in Asia. On December 15, 1978, then U.S. President Jimmy Carter announced that his country would break diplomatic ties with Taiwan, switching recognition to the People's Republic of China. The move was a long time coming. Taiwan had been expelled from the United Nations several years earlier, in 1971, with few recognizing its claim to be the legitimate government of all of China. And under Carter's predecessor, Richard Nixon, the U.S. began normalizing relations with Beijing. Still, the mood in Taipei was grim. People, angry with what they saw as a betrayal by the U.S., held increasingly violent anti-American protests. The government, under the lead of President Jiang Jingguo, tried to quell public outrage and chart a new course forward. Former diplomat Frederick Qian, Taiwan's deputy foreign minister at the time, was one of the top officials in charge of overseeing the American transition out of Taiwan. His task was to negotiate certain assurances.
Most importantly, security. Second, arms sale. Third, the property we have in the United States. And then we have air links and shipping. Will that be possible to continue, or that PRC might take over?
But Taiwan still had strong support from many on Capitol Hill. A group of Congress members, upset with Carter's switch to the PRC, worked to craft a piece of legislation that would come to define the U.S.-Taiwan relationship in the decade since. While behind the scenes, people on the ground in Taiwan were also hard at work making sure that the law would be strong enough to last. One of them was Robert Parker, who had just become chair of the American Chamber of Commerce in Taiwan. Parker traveled from Taipei to Washington, D.C., to campaign for protecting not just U.S. business interests in Taiwan, but also the robust trade and investment ties the two countries had developed.
The challenge was to fill that void, to describe in practical terms what we as Americans, both in the business community in Taiwan and in a broader sense between our two countries, needed on a practical basis to continue cordial, successful, normal relations in the absence of formal diplomatic relations.
Parker and others' testimony proved persuasive, and the bill that was signed into law on April 10, 1979, was much more powerful than President Carter or Beijing had anticipated. The Taiwan Relations Act calls for Taiwan to be treated the same as any other foreign country under U.S. laws, allows the U.S. to provide weapons for Taiwan's defense, directs the president to inform Congress of any threats to Taiwan's security, and establishes the American Institute in Taiwan, a nonprofit corporation that serves as Washington's de facto embassy in Taipei. In the years since the TRA was passed, U.S.-Taiwan relations have significantly deepened, yet the threat from China, which claims Taiwan as its own, has continued to grow. It's caused some to rethink the Act's limitations and to call for a clearer stance from the U.S.
We argue that the U.S. should maybe adopt a strategy called dual clarity. That is to specify under what conditions that the U.S. will do the intervention and the military help to Taiwan. For example, if China use force, then the U.S. will help Taiwan. And the U.S. should be very clear that if Taiwan changes status quo, then the U.S. will not help Taiwan.
Despite growing concerns over Taiwan's security, the TRA has endured as the strong foundation of the U.S.-Taiwan relationship, one which has allowed ties to flourish for more than 4 decades. Chris Ma and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, check out this unusual swarm of jellyfish appearing along the coast of Venezuela this year, affecting the local fishing industry. I'm Sally Jensen. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.